Hello and welcome back to Kilmainham Gaol for another one of our Kilmainham Gaol on lockdown videos. Today we are continuing our series looking at the 1916 Rising through objects in the Kilmainham Gaol collection. We're particularly looking at the story of medical staff in 1916, and this is inspired by reading in Frank Burke's witness statement. Frank Burke was a former pupil of Patrick Pearse, but he described how on the 27th of April James Connolly was shot and was cared for by two doctors. One was Jim Ryan, who was a member of the Irish Volunteers, and the other was a doctor called George Mahoney, who was from County Cork but was a member of the Royal Army Medical Corps, and he was actually taken prisoner by the rebels, but he volunteered to help treat the sick and the wounded. But the object we're going to look at first is related to a doctor associated with the Irish Citizens' Army. That was Dr. Kathleen Lynn. Dr. Lynn was from County Mayo. Her father was a clergyman, and she trained to be a medical doctor, which was very unusual at the time for a woman to train to be a doctor. So she was a real trailblazer in that respect. She also joined the Irish Citizens' Army, and during the Rising she was stationed at City Hall, and there she would have cared for Sean Connolly, who would have been the first of the rebels to be killed. And this is her medical box, and we're going to have a closer look. Have to be very careful, so apologies now if the camera work isn't as good as it could be. I unbuckled this earlier, so I'm just going to move this here. And just open it up like this. Something obviously we can't normally do when it's on display. And you can just see in here, just move this carefully. This is where she would have, I suppose, stored needles and medicines and stuff like that. So this is very much for an item that you would use on the go. And she ended up being, I suppose, the senior person in City Hall. So she would have been also involved when they surrendered to British forces. She was then imprisoned in Ship Street barracks, and then she came here to Kilmainham Gaol. And we'll talk a little bit more in another video about her time in Kilmainham. But one of the other objects associated with City Hall and the medical story is this nurse's uniform or apron, which was made and owned, we believe, by Bridget Davis, who was a nurse with the Irish Citizens' Army. And again, it's a fascinating object. Just going to go around this way. So what's great about this is we kind of get to show you lots of the details. So you can see here, it's clearly handmade, and it would have gone over her dress. Just have it up in a box there, and it's made from linen. And then you can just see here the Red Cross on the arm. Nora Daly, who was a member of Kilmainham, she just said that a lot of the Kilmainham women who were trained in first aid had Red Crosses on their uniforms in Stephen's Green, and she felt that they were just acting as a target. So Bridget Davis, as I said, also based in City Hall, and she would have nursed Sean Connolly. Apparently he died in her arms, and then she was among the women that were marched up here to Kilmainham Gaol from Ship Street. So she would have been with Dr. Lynn. There's a story attached to it that there are some stains on it, on this apron, and the story is that they may be blood stains from caring for Sean Connolly, but it's very hard to prove that at this stage. But there are stains on the hem of the apron, and apparently the weather wasn't great, and it got muddy on the march up here to Kilmainham Gaol. But interestingly, Bridget Davis and Kathleen Lynn, they remained medical colleagues and friends. And during the great flu epidemic of 1918, which of course is very high on our minds at the moment, Bridget Davis apparently helped Kathleen Lynn. We have a letter in our collection where Kathleen Lynn asks Bridget if she would go and nurse a child who was ill in Rathmines, and Kathleen Lynn actually says that she's basically exhausted caring for victims of the Great Flu pandemic of 1918. Dr. Lynn also describes how she managed to get hold of some vaccine and vaccinated a whole load of members of the Irish Citizens Army. And then they later worked together in St. Ultan's Hospital, which was a hospital set up by Dr. Lynn and her partner, Madeleine French-Mullen, on Charlemont Street in Dublin to care for poor children in Dublin. And Bridget Davis apparently worked there as well. So that's it for now. Join us for our next video, which again we'll be looking at objects associated with the 1916 Rising. And until then, we would ask you all to stay safe. And I suppose because we're talking about medical staff, we'd also like to, I suppose, dedicate this video to all the amazing medical staff who are keeping us safe at the moment. There's very little we can do as a museum to say thank you, but this is the best, I suppose, that we can do. And I suppose it's great as well to highlight the great tradition that they are part of, that include people like Kathleen Lynn, Bridget Davis, George Mahoney and Dr. Jim Ryan. Okay, until the next time, take care. Bye-bye.